Welcome, Jordan.
Thanks.
You wanted to say something to the crowd before we started.
Salam alaikum, Dubai.
Salam alaikum. So, Jordan, you just heard the speaker, John, right before when he ended, he talked about you.
Yeah.
He mentioned that you've built 3 companies, 16 years old. What is going through your head when you hear someone say that about you?
Yeah, it's pretty surreal really when I think about it. I'm really lucky to have over the past few years been given the opportunity to start my own businesses, create my own products. So yeah, I'm really fortunate. It's a big honor.
So I want to start at the beginning, Jordan, of your journey.
Yeah.
Okay? When was the first time that you thought, I want to build apps?
It probably goes back to about 7 years ago, when I was 9 years old.
9 years old.
Yeah, I always sort of had an interest in like computers and sort of building things. Like I remember when I was younger, I used to want to be like a businessman. I used to sell my old toys to my neighbors. I used to pretend to be a karate instructor, try to make money, even though I had no idea how to do karate. So I sort of had this sort of business entrepreneurial mindset from a young age, and then when I discovered that I could use computers to sort of use the entrepreneurial mindset, that's sort of how my interest in apps came. So I used to play a game on the internet called Club Penguin, which is this little game where you play as like a penguin character and you go around talking to people. And I saw that some of the people who played the game were making their own websites and blogs sort of around that. And me being like a curious 9-year-old just had an interest in that. And I convinced my grandmother to buy me a book on programming. Learned how to make my own sort of Club Penguin website, and then after a few years wanted a new challenge, and that's why I came across apps.
So, okay, I need to rewind here.
Okay.
So you're 9 years old when you start your first app,
Yeah.
and you start teaching karate, and you don't know karate.
Yeah.
And I'm interested, what inspired this? Were your parents entrepreneurs? Was there an entrepreneurial society around you? What was going on in your head?
It's an interesting question. My parents aren't entrepreneurs. They both work in finance, so sort of different from that. But I always sort of wanted to solve problems, like whether it be teaching my friends how to use the karate, or like providing the people on the Club Penguin game with news, or creating an app that helps solve a problem or fix an issue. I just kind of wanted to use my knowledge to help other people, and that's sort of how it came about. And if I can make money from that as well, that's a bit of a bonus. So yeah, I didn't really have this sort of environment around me. My parents obviously gave me a lot of freedom to sort of go down this route, but I just sort of came from wanting to solve problems pretty much.
So I'm interested in what keeps you motivated, because I remember when I was between 9 and 16, when I wake up in the morning, I'm only worried about what I'm going to eat for the day.
Yeah.
And I think it's fascinating to understand about, like, you wake up in the morning, you have your breakfast, let me build an app. Or how does your thought process work?
Well, just to clarify, I'm big into what I eat for the day as well. Like that's sort of my thing as well. Like it's just kind of an extra bonus thing. I don't really see myself sort of like much different from my peers. Like I get up, I go to school normally like everyone else. It's just sort of like started off as a hobby pretty much. Like I didn't really see it as like this sort of mindset. But what motivates me again is just solving the problems, like getting the opportunity. Like I'm really lucky to be able to be in the situation I am. Like I'm motivated by the fact that I get a sort of head start on what I want to do. Like in 10 years time, I'll be like 26 years old, and I already have like 13 years experience of running my own business and creating apps.
Wow.
So like that's a bonus as well. But yeah, it's just what motivates me is to sort of solve the problems and take advantage of how lucky I am, and also just to pretty much inspire other people. Like I'm really lucky to have a voice and a platform to share what my thoughts and my views. Like there's a lot of other young people like me who have the same interests who aren't as lucky, so I try to act as sort of a symbol for what young people can do, and that kind of motivates me as well.
I'm interested, when you started creating these companies, building things, getting noticed in the community, we're here with a lot of senior leaders from the government.
Yeah.
Did you get much support? Did anyone reach out to you from the government to say, how can we help you? What can we do for you?
Yeah, so pretty much the Irish government is very interesting because a couple of years ago, the problem in Ireland was that most people who went to college or university were emigrating because of work. So what the Irish government did is they lowered the corporate tax to very low so that they could attract international companies. So now there was a problem where we had so many companies, but then there was a lack of knowledge. So what the Irish government have invested heavily into recently is trying to get more people like myself, more young entrepreneurs, more people in computer science. And so they're really interested in sort of people like me, and they have supported me in the past. For example, like getting a grant for my business, just having a platform to speak. They run a number of events similar to this where I was allowed to sort of share my story, and also just to just try to promote more young entrepreneurs. Pretty much, like education is also a huge factor in that. Like in the Irish education system recently, they've introduced things like programming and coding and computers
In schools?
in schools. Yeah, so that's sort of being brought out now. It's just they sort of used me as an example of what can happen if they invest into their young people, especially again around technology. It's just sort of filling the jobs and trying to create a technology hub in Ireland. So yeah, the government have been really supportive of me, and I've also worked with other organisations such as the European Union. They're also very interested in getting young people like myself out there looking at the future. So my work there has just been given a platform to share my views on European policy and how it affects young people, because it affects us a lot, and we have the right to sort of have a voice. So yeah, I've been pretty involved with both the Irish government and the European Union, so they've been really supportive.
I'm curious about something, Jordan. I have two sons, and they're in school now.
Yeah.
And it's a school day in Ireland too.
Yeah.
Why aren't you in school?
Good question.
How have your school? So what I'm trying to ask is, does your school know that you're here? Do they support you? Do they know what you're up to?
Well, they know I'm not in school anyway. I'm not sure if they know that I'm in Dubai at a government conference. But my school in Ireland is called De La Salle, and they're really supportive of the work I do. They give me a lot of leeway and a free time to do events like this, because they know it benefits me. Like obviously I'm gonna have to catch up on like my English and my history and my Irish language when I get back. But they are really supportive of me. And last year, especially in Ireland, we have this year which can also benefit what we're trying to talk about, like young people and entrepreneurs, etc. It's called Transition Year. And basically it's a year in the Irish curriculum where there's a less focus on academic work and more about sort of yourself and your career. So you take pretty much a year out of school to focus on what kind of job you want to do, internships, different career paths you can take, sort of focuses on your hobbies. So if you're interested in sport, you can take a year to do sport. So that's also a really beneficial year. It's benefited me highly because I got the opportunity to work on my businesses pretty much for a full year. So in Ireland, the transition year program we have is really, really beneficial. I think that could be...
So in school, they give you the opportunity to go and build things, to go and start a business, to go and...
Exactly, yeah, that's pretty much it. And like from what I've seen, it's so beneficial in Ireland, and it's kind of shocking to see when you come around to like all over the world, you see like there's nothing else out there like this. That's one of my favorite things about my country. Like the education system there is pretty good.
So let me ask, John mentioned about jobs of the future. 25 years is going to look completely different. Am I correct, John? So you as a 16-year-old sitting there looking into this future, I want to ask, what do you think?
So like, what do I think about the future? Or like...
What do you think about the future? Given that all these jobs are going to be changing, the way your parents work, the way my parents work, the way a lot of people here view work, how are you viewing work and the future of employment and all these things?
I think it's exciting. Like there's a lot of people, especially sort of older people, that could sort of obviously be intimidated by that. But I think the good thing about young people and people like myself is we sort of have this fearless mentality. So like when I started doing what I'm doing, like I didn't think about like, oh, what if I go bankrupt, or like what if my business fails, or all this. I think of the positives, like how lucky I am to be in the situation I am. And I think we can view the jobs of the future in that same mindset as well. Obviously I'm lucky that I sort of still have a choice of what I want to do, but like, yeah, I think it's really exciting. I think not just me as like this entrepreneur, but just young people in general are really excited to see that the jobs that like aren't even out there yet could be their future job. And I think it sort of has that sort of exciting element. Like it's really cool. I think it's really cool.
Jordan, I want to ask you a general question because we're trying to understand the youth and what they care about and how we can engage them. So you as a youth from Ireland, spending some time in the UAE, what do you care about?
Yeah, I just think it's really important for young people to, like, what I think is really important and what I care about mostly is, again, young people keep being given a voice, and I think it's really important that us, like the people of like the world, take young people seriously. Like a problem that I had when I was starting out at home in Ireland is people sort of don't really view you as an actual business person. They kind of patronize you. They see you as this kid like having fun
Put you down.
doing a game. Yeah, put me down exactly. So like if I wanted to get things like investment or mentorship, it's perceived in Europe like that it's kind of a game for me. And when I was in the USA a few years ago, I saw a completely different mentality, especially around Silicon Valley. And they don't really view you as who you are, but also they view you as your idea and what you can bring to the table.
So they're able to separate the person and the age, the identity from the value that can be created.
Yeah, exactly,
Sure.
the idea. And that it really inspired me, but it also frustrated me a bit as well because it's completely different in Europe. And like that's why I think Silicon Valley is doing so well because there's so many young people with all these ideas. Like an example is there was an entrepreneur in Ireland who was 18, Patrick Collison is his name, and he tried to get funding for his company in Ireland, and they kind of turned him down. He flew over to the USA and they bought it straight away for millions of dollars, and like now he runs Stripe. So like it's examples like that really sort of frustrate me, and I think that mentality definitely needs to change. I think young people need to be taken more seriously. I think the person needs to be separated from their ideas and what they can actually bring to the table. And I think through that in Europe, I'm not sure about how the situation is in here, but I think that could be really beneficial as well.
A big role model for many people in the room, and you know we've talked about him a lot, and you'll have seen his pictures. Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, the Prime Minister of the UAE and ruler of Dubai. Who inspires you personally?
Interesting question. I'm inspired by a lot of entrepreneurs like myself, like sort of obviously the cliche one would be Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, but their stories really inspire me as well. But I also kind of one of my main like inspirers would be a man called Marcus Persson. So he created a game called Minecraft.
Minecraft.
Yeah. So his story was pretty fascinating to me. That he was able to build this basic pixelated game in his house and transform that into such a global phenomenon that is Minecraft. And like the fact that he built this huge gaming empire from it, but also the game itself like benefits people as well, inspires me. And like I have to credit a lot of like how I've done to being inspired by him, but also the game itself, Minecraft, is also hugely beneficial. Like it's very creative, it's educational, and like I've learned a lot from his story and the game itself. So that's one of my main sort of inspirations.
A big part of responsibility from a lot of officials here is, given that the hardships they went through, the difficulties they went through, it's a big responsibility on us to make it easier for the next generation, to make sure that they're working more effectively. So given the hardships that you went through, given the people who didn't take you seriously, all the help that you needed, how are you trying to inspire youth in Ireland? What sort of, are you doing any projects that sort of gives them the opportunities that you didn't have?
Yeah, definitely. Like my experiences have been very like, although they have been difficult, they've been worthwhile as well as because I've been able to start a number of projects, like you said, to sort of fix this. So one of them I'm doing is called Kids Code.
Kids Code.
And basically this is an online platform for young kids to learn how to code using visual elements like pictures, etc. And as they progress, it becomes more script-based, and they actually learn how to program in a game-like manner. And they get to share their games, they get to collaborate, which is a really, really important trait to have in everything that I do. And they get to sort of be creative with coding, and they get to share their ideas. So that's something that I would have really, really liked when I was like starting off this, and I think it's a really interesting platform. Also, In Ireland, I also sit on a government board called the Digital Youth Council.
You sit on a government board.
It's sort of it's affiliated with the government. Basically, it's a board of young Irish people who are interested in technology. It was founded by my friend called Harry, and basically it advises the government on what young people want in technology, what they want in policy, etc. And so we go out, we speak to other young people, we do surveys, we take their opinions on board, and we use the fortunate, like we're very fortunate to have the voice and like a platform to share those views. And I'm also working on a movement called the Teenage Entrepreneur Movement. The Teenage
Entrepreneurship Movement.
Yeah, exactly. So that's another sort of idea that I have to provide support, funding, networking with for other young entrepreneurs. Obviously, again, like growing up with like doing what I was doing, it was very hard again to be taken seriously, but also just to find the information that I needed to run my business pretty much. And I want to create a hub where other young entrepreneurs can go to get access to software that they could use, get access to contacts that could be beneficial to them, and just pretty much create a network where young people can collaborate together and share their ideas and sort of have a platform pretty much. So there's a lot that I want to do to inspire more young people and give more young people a voice, and like again, getting the opportunity to come to these events, I mean, really fortunate. Yeah, so like that's what I want to do. I sort of want to be a symbol for the good things that can happen if young people are given a voice.
So you're an advisor, you sit on a government board, we're at a government forum, you have all these senior officials, advise them. I'll give you the floor. What would you say to them?
Okay, this should be interesting. Basically, again, another thing that I really want to focus on is education. And I think something that, in Ireland especially, is there's a mentality where the student can't teach the teacher, it's just the teacher that teaches the student. And I think that has a lot to do with the curriculum as well. So I think that mentality sort of completely needs to change. I think we need to get into an environment where the teacher and the students can learn off each other, because I find in Ireland my teachers will be very intimidated by the fact that us young people can sort of have every bit of information we need at our fingertips. So I think the curriculum needs to adjust and change to that, and I think people like the government and other organisations need to promote the internet. Like that's
Promote the internet.
Definitely, I think that's another really important trait. And like for example, if I wanted to publish a game 30 years ago, I would have had to build it on like some big computer, pitch it to these publishers, get it out physically in a store, and hope it sells. If I want to publish a game now, thanks to the internet, all I have to do is click a button and potentially I can reach billions of people instantly. So I think a huge advantage of living in the generation that we do live in is we have the internet, and I think a lot of young people don't really understand how amazing it is to be able to share your views and ideas, such as like it's the same with like music and like writing and videos like YouTube and stuff like that. And I think the government and organisations obviously need to promote that instead of seeing it as sort of like a hobby or like, oh, this is what you can do in your free time. I think like if it's like sort of after school you can use the internet like to go on social networks. I think it needs to be embraced. I think it needs to be brought into the education system, and I think it needs to be promoted really heavily because the internet is sort of it's the reason I'm here pretty much.
And is that advice based on your example of the Irish government seeing a bunch of quote unquote kids building things, playing with technology, and said, let's take these kids seriously. Exactly, let's give them a platform. Let's help them inspire other youth.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Like it's us kids like being in the situation where we're just like using it as a hobby, and then we're given the voice, and now we're lucky to be in the situation and we're in. So that's pretty much why I'm here, and also like my parents also played a really big part in what I do. So even just on the subject of the internet again, my parents used to have this mentality where I spent too much time on the internet. They used to kind of force me to go outside and play football and stuff like that. Like I love football, but like they didn't really see what I was doing. One day when I was younger, I had to try and convince them to buy me an Apple Mac computer so I could publish my own apps. And they sort of had this mentality that instead of wanting to to make my games, they thought I was just getting this computer to play games. So it was pretty difficult to try and then convince them to buy me the computer. So what I did was I forged an illegal letter from Apple and sent it to my parents, pretending to be this big executive, convincing them to buy me this Mac. So my parents bought it. They bought the Mac, and
Based on this fake
based on the
letter.
So that was a pretty interesting thing. But since then, they've sort of discovered what I do. I think they have anyway. But yeah, like it's down to that like mindset of parents as well. Like it's not only the government that need to sort of give young people a voice or take them seriously. I think parents need to take advantage of sort of what their kids do, like really listen to their kids, take them seriously, and let them follow whatever interest they want to. Like if my parents took me off the internet or didn't give me that freedom, then like the opportunities that I might have missed out on are huge. So I think it's really important that we listen to the youth, especially from a parent's mindset as well.
Jordan, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. Ladies and gentlemen, sorry, we have a question. Okay. Question from the audience.
Yes, شكرا خالد. اسأل لنا إياه سؤالين بس. أول شيء إذا يبغي شريك مواطن معه.
Would you like an Emirati partner? I think he's offering to support.
My grandson, you know.
Yeah.
It's his grandson.
Yeah.
Maybe he would like to partner with you. Maybe you can have a meeting after.
الشيء الثاني قديش معاه فلوس؟
So you've built 3 businesses. His Excellency is wondering how much money do you have? Can you retire at 16?
Not yet. No, I don't think so. Like making a little bit, thankfully.
So your company's making you money?
Yeah, so basically from the Kids Code app, which I was mentioning there, like we have advertising pretty much and a subscription model. So like, we do make a little bit.
Let me ask, do you still have to, at 16, do you still have to ask your parents for money?
Not anymore. Sometimes I do, but they don't let me. They make me pay for myself. So
I was 25 and still going to my dad saying, "Can I have some cash?"
I wish I was like that. Yeah.
That's amazing. Do we have any more comments or questions? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Jordan Casey.
Thank you very much.